So, Matt, I have a question that I've been wanting to ask you for a while.
Oh gosh. All right.
Who are you voting for this year? I can't even
In New
ask it
Zealand,
without feeling uncomfortable.
can I share like my New Zealand vote because that
Oh,
matters a lot less.
sure. Which, by the way, I don't know if people know, but you are a dual citizen. You're
I
American
am. Shout
and
out. Got my American citizenship 2 years ago.
yeah.
Yeah. I am not going to answer that question. That's really inappropriate.
Okay, fine.
You first. I should have said that. You first.
Yeah. I am voting for no. Welcome to the LeadrPulse Podcast, the podcast with actionable insights for leaders revolutionizing the world of work. I'm Holly Tate, your host and Chief Marketing Officer here at Leadr. And today's conversation is a hot topic. Should you talk about politics in the workplace? And this was inspired by a conversation that Matt Tresidder, our co-founder and CEO, had with Patrick Lencioni. We here at Leadr are partnered with Pat and the Table Group. We have built a platform called the Leadr Advantage to help drive clarity and effectiveness across your organization. So listen up as Matt and Pat and I unpack this topic of should you or shouldn't you talk about politics in the workplace? Even as I asked that, it was like, I feel uncomfortable. And so we've had what a gift over the last 9 months or so that we've gotten to work with the Table Group and Patrick Lencioni. Pat, we were with him a few months ago, but he was talking about politics in the workplace. And then I know you had a follow-up conversation with him recently. So I want everybody to get to hear it and then really want to unpack it with you. So let's listen to what he had to say.
It's election year, and I've heard you talk about how don't shy away from transparent and honest and open conversation and just engage and just dive into the conversation without being, you don't want to create a divide, but you do want to engage in the conversation, not ignore it. So do you want to talk to me about why you believe strongly about conversations like that can and should happen in the workplace?
Yeah, and I think that I want to be clear, though. I'm not saying you should encourage it, tee it up, formalize it. I'm just saying that people bring their full selves to the workplace. And if they feel like I'm not allowed to ever engage around something I feel strongly about, that only raises the temperature and the awkwardness in the office. And so what I'm saying is, if a person has a feeling about something, we should say, hey, listen, everybody's feelings are valid. As long as you're not violating a core value, because that's the limits of diversity. It's like our core values we have in common. You can share that. You do it with respect and you listen to people and you don't judge them. You don't berate them. Then you're kind of like letting the air out of that balloon slowly so it doesn't pop. But what happens is companies most of the time just say, we're not going to go there. And then finally somebody just explodes.
Right.
And so the message is really letting people be fully human. Now, if somebody comes to work every day and they're venting about a candidate, that's appropriate to go, hey, we are here to work and get stuff done. And I know you can pursue those things on your own time. It's fine to share your opinions with people, especially with people you know and trust well. But having big public conversations about politics in the office that's disruptive, no, that's over the line.
Such a good distinction. And do you have any encouragement to the executive that's knowing that there's a pretty volatile election coming this year, knowing that there is going to be disagreement under the surface in the office? Do you have any encouragement on maybe how to front foot that, if at all?
You know what I would say? I would say, because this is the most divided society has been in my lifetime, our country. And frankly, I think there are forces driving that want that. And I think if I were a leader, I'd probably say, hey, everybody, I know we all know what's going on in the election and we're going to eventually vote and you're going to hear all kinds of things. You're going to have emotion around it. That's normal. That's good. You care. I don't want anybody here to think that it would be impossible for somebody to really want one of the candidates to win. If you come in here and think, oh, that is so, I can't believe you would want that. Believe it, know it. Every viewpoint is valid to a certain extent. And if you come in here and are like, well, that's just ridiculous that you would think that. I had my brother recently tell me that I had to tell him I would never vote for one of the candidates. And I was like, first of all, it's not your place to tell me that. And secondly, there's reasons why somebody might vote. And I think if everybody goes into it saying, hey, everybody's got their own opinions and they can validate those opinions. And so respect that. But the problem is a lot of people are like, oh no, I think that's terrible that you would think that. And those kind of people you don't want in your company.
Right.
A person who can't empathize with another person is somebody who there's something going, there's a wound there or a lack of understanding there. So I think it's like nobody here should tell somebody else that their opinion
I
is
love
already
that.
right.
One things I've heard you share really passionately about was some people in Silicon Valley feeling ostracized and feeling like they can't speak up for their political viewpoint or even their religious viewpoint, and they kind of keep to themselves because they don't want to be quote unquote canceled. Do you have anything to say to that leader that's not bringing their full selves to work because they know if they do, they'll be ostracized or kind of cast out from their team?
Well, what I would say is two things. One, find a place to work, ideally, that actually respects you as a human being. That says, if you go to church here and you believe this about life, as long as you can tolerate people who have different views, you should be able to go to work and be yourself and express yourself. The Silicon Valley, a place that often thinks it's the most tolerant, is actually in many cases the most intolerant. And when I talk to people there, they're like, oh, we want people to be open-minded about everything. We want diversity as long as they don't think differently than I do, which is like, I think the most fundamental violation of diversity.
Right.
So what we say is, if you really want a diverse, tolerant environment, then tolerate and welcome diversity of thought and opinion and faith too.
Right.
So if you really want to be diverse, be open to everyone. And if you work in a company that won't allow you to do that, but I would say, be the hero that kindly goes to the leadership and say, hey, you guys, you know something? I don't feel like I'm welcome here. And maybe you can affect change so that other people will feel welcome too. And if they say, yeah, actually, we're not welcoming of that, then I think you need to say, then don't pretend you're a diverse company. In fact, you're not diverse. And I want to work someplace that is truly diverse.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean some small companies or some companies can't say, no, we actually do make one of our core values a belief in this. Just be upfront about it so people can opt out or opt in based on that.
Do you think a CEO listening to this of a small, medium-sized business has a duty to voice that? Because I think a lot of the things that you're saying are probably subconsciously understood, but maybe they haven't actually come out and been verbal and being that obtuse and clear to their staff on what you just described, that people shouldn't feel that way. So does the CEO, especially in a year like this, where it is so divided, do we have a responsibility to actually come out and be forthright with that? Is that something we should do?
Yes. And I think it's like this. Let's call it issue X. So it doesn't matter what it is, left, right, whatever. If issue X is so important to your small business or medium-sized business, and you believe it in your heart, I think it's important to come up to people and say, you know something, everybody, this is something we believe is important. And if you're not in support of issue X, you're probably not going to be comfortable here. And we don't want anybody to feel uncomfortable. So I just want to admit, I don't want to pretend like it doesn't matter, because it does. And let you know that if you're anti-issue X, then gosh, this might not be the place for you. That's actually an act of mercy and kindness, because you're being clear.
Yes.
But if you're like, hey, issue X is really important to a lot of people here, I get that. But we don't believe that it's a deal breaker at all. We think that we can have people that don't support issue X and people that do, and nobody should feel unwelcome because of that. Okay. That's also an act of mercy and kindness. What's wrong, and what happens too often, is when people secretly think issue X is the thing, but they say, oh no, we're tolerant of everybody, but then they don't give promotions to, and they're snarky to, and they make public declarations for issue X, and people who don't support issue X are made to feel like they should just be quiet. Then they live in a ghetto. That is wrong. So have the courage to be upfront.
I love it. I can hear the built-in excuse of someone saying, well, we haven't defined our values. Because one of the things you said earlier was point back to the values. But what I can hear someone saying, well, we haven't actually defined that before. We didn't communicate any of that in the onboarding class. So it's probably too late. So I'm just going to let it simmer and let it lie. Is that a good excuse or no?
No, it's always a great time to clarify things.
Okay.
And whether you have old values that are generic. And there's a lot of companies out there that go, gosh, we've had these for years, but it's like, be nice, be friendly, smile a lot. And it's like, that's not core values.
Yeah.
Or you've never done it. it's a great time to stop and say, let's actually clarify, because what you're doing is you're providing the boundaries. It's like if you're bowling, a little kid, and you put the little guardrails up, you're saying, we don't want to drift into the gutter.
Yeah.
And so let's actually clarify, what are the must-haves that if a person doesn't share that behavioral value, it would be better for them to work someplace else. And it usually comes down to 2 or 3 behavioral adjectives or behavioral things. And then it's okay to say, and if you don't have those, you might be a wonderful person, but it would be better if you were a wonderful person in an organization that valued that.
Totally.
Okay, so politics in the workplace. So as I want to hear from you first, because I have thoughts, but as CEO and co-founder, like, does this topic make you uncomfortable, or are you just like, yeah, whatever, it's politics in the workplace?
No. It makes it, I don't know if it's uncomfortable. I just want to do the right thing. And I felt like through the last 2 years, I felt more and more compelled to needing to say something to my team. And I didn't know what to say because I wasn't sure what was the one thing that I was going to say that was going to like divorce our culture and create like a big schism. So this happened for me. There was something last year. I think it was Columbus Day and then the Ukraine war. And there was a third event that happened around there. And I had 3 days in a row, someone say, hey, I was a little disappointed that you didn't say anything about those things at our company All Hands. So that happened last year. And I remember being pretty miffed by that.
What do you mean? Why, when you say miffed, like, tell me more about like, why were you frustrated by that?
Is miffed an American term? Does that make sense?
Yeah, like frustrated.
Okay, good. Yeah, frustrated. I was frustrated. I was just like, so my thought was, we're a software company. We sell technology. We're here to develop leaders. I have one mission, and my mission is not fill in the blank on all of the other social justice missions in the world, even if, and I'm not even minimizing the importance of them. It's just not my purpose right now is not to shout from the rooftops those things. And so the box that I felt myself in was, even if I felt strongly and felt like I should share about it, now that I've opened my mouth on one thing, I felt like I was going to have to be the spokesperson for all things. And that was terrifying, because what if I miss like the one thing that someone really deeply cares about? Now all of a sudden they feel ostracized. So then what I did was just share about none of them. And I don't think that's the right approach either. So yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah. What do you think?
Well, it feels like a lot of pressure, right? Like, not only, that makes a lot of sense, where you feel like, okay, now I feel like I have to talk about all the things, because I mean, think about the last few years. It feels like, I know we've always had a lot going on in the world, but especially in COVID and since COVID over the last several years, it feels like every couple months there's just something really big happening around the world, and we're more connected than ever through social media and through all the things. So it's like, not only does it feel like, when do I say the right thing, but then what is the right thing to say? So it's a lot.
Right now it's like the Israel versus Palestine thing,
right?
Like, that is something that it feels like one of those issues that is, everyone is hearing about it, paying attention to it outside of work, but then mum's the word inside of work, and you just ignore it and pretend like outside the 4 walls of the company nothing's happening. That doesn't feel like the right approach. So I wrestled with this, and that was why I wanted to get Pat's take.
Yeah. Okay, so what do you think? I mean, so he says that you should talk about it. What I appreciate about what he said was the whole, and their mission is, that people should have dignity in the workplace.
Yeah.
That's a word that you don't hear very often. I mean, that be a whole conversation. Like, what does that even mean to have people being able to have dignity at work? So how do you think about that, as far, now that we're a year removed? Like, how are you thinking about what you do say or don't say from a leadership perspective?
He said something around values, which sparked an encouragement for me. So he said, bring it back to the values about why your company exists and what are the core values around like how we should behave. And so one of Leadr's values is, we believe that everybody should love Mondays as much as Fridays. Not more than Fridays, but we're here to solve one problem, which is that most people unengaged in the workplace don't enjoy their work. And one of the biggest reasons for that is because they don't have great leaders. So One reason why people don't love Mondays is because they can't bring their full selves to work on Mondays, whether it's their boss or otherwise. And if I wanted to fix one thing, it's that we can create a workplace where employees, staff, everybody really looks forward to coming to work on Monday, and they can't do that unless they can bring their full selves to work. So our DEI statement is everybody has an opportunity to belong, and everybody should be able to bring their full selves to work every single day, even in the midst of full disagreement on the political, religious spectrum, whatever, pick whatever hot topic you want, right?
Yeah.
So what I think is important for me to articulate to the team is exactly that. And it's just important to get the words right.
Yeah. So it's like, it's not that we have to stand up and say, have an opinion about politics or candidates or something going on in the world, but it's that we're creating a space where people feel like they can voice their feelings. Is that?
I haven't said it yet to the team. So this is almost like this is like a breeding ground of us figuring it out, like processing that with you. So the statement
always fun to do that on a podcast,
right? Why not?
that anybody can
Of course.
listen to.
Yeah, of course. So the statement that we have is our goal is that everybody, regardless of culture, background, and perspective, has the opportunity to love Mondays as much as Fridays. What I want to say to the team is this is likely going to be a very divisive year in politics.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably going to be worse than it's ever been, if that's even possible. Mm-hmm. And there are people at Leadr that are on both sides of the aisle. And a win for Leadr is that everybody, regardless of where you stand, can come to work feeling like they're not ostracized, minimized, demonized, that they feel like they can bring their full selves, with a caveat of don't incite like debate and don't create, what is the saying? Two visions is division. So don't create division by coming in and just sparking like a debate when it's not necessary. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is we should recognize that this exists. We should recognize that there is like tension bubbling under the surface, but calling out that we are here to solve one mission, and that really doesn't belong here. What do you think?
Yeah, well, first of all, that was really cool. The division. I've never really thought about that before. Yeah, different visions.
Yeah.
Anyway,
we have one vision, but everyone has their stuff that they're going through, and they should be able to bring their stuff.
Well, and I think so I agree with you. And then as you were talking, I was like, but what I don't want is, yes, for people to come in. And actually, one of my friends was talking about this the other day. There was a team member who, and they're in kind of an open office concept. And there was somebody that came in and was just inciting made a lot of people feel uncomfortable, kind of in front of the whole office. And so it's like, ooh, we want people to bring their full selves to work, but not if it inhibits other people from being their full selves.
Yes.
And so I think as long as that is clear and examples of what that looks like, and isn't a distraction from the mission. And so going back to like, our mission is to develop 1 million leaders, period.
Yes.
And so if anything we're doing, regardless of whether it's politics or social activity, like whatever it is, distracting our team from that mission, that's not going to be tolerated. So yeah, I think that's a good point to solve for it by going back, which is why it's so important that we as companies or organizations, whether you're a nonprofit or a for-profit, that we have a clear mission. Because in years like this year, it is very difficult for you to right size, or it's easy for things to derail when you don't have a North Star to point people back to.
Right.
But if everybody's unified around why they're showing up to work every day, and feels like which going back to Pat, like one of his books around employee engagement says that everyone needs to see that their work is relevant, that there's relevancy in the work that they're doing. So if we can point them back to that and not get distracted by these other things that are happening in society or in politics, I think that's a good way to do it.
Yeah.
Not easy, but good.
Yeah. Yeah. Not easy.
Because I would prefer to just not talk about it. So that's where
well, let's talk about that, because I haven't, right? We've never.
No.
So do you feel a need for me to say something like Pat just did now? Like, would that actually help?
I think what you just said, where it's like getting ahead of the fact that, hey, and I think now is a good time to do it, like late spring in the summer before we go into where it is probably going to get even worse towards this fall, of getting ahead of it by just going back, because we haven't really talked about our DEI policy in a while. We rolled it out, I guess, about a year ago, maybe. And so it's actually, I think, good accountability for us as a leadership team to point back to it, bring it up again, not only just because it's a political year, but we should be doing that regularly to hold ourselves accountable for that. So I guess for me, it's more about bringing the team back to that North Star of our mission and our making sure everyone feels belong, or that they can belong, and then that they love Mondays as much as Fridays. I think that's always good for us to do, regardless of what year we're in.
I agree. And I'm gonna work to do better at that this time, instead of just being silent on everything.
Yeah. So now, are you gonna tell me who you're gonna vote for?
You first.
But thanks for listening to the LeadrPulse podcast. Hope you enjoyed today's episode with Patrick Lencioni, Matt Tresidder, and myself, as we unpacked this idea of, should you talk about politics in the workplace? I don't know about you, but I walked away with some actionable insights around really driving clarity around our mission and our values. We'd love for you to check out the Leadr Advantage, which is our platform in partnership with Pat and the Table Group. You can check it out at leadr.com/table-group. That's leadr.com/table-group. You can also just go to our homepage and talk to our team, learn more. There at the top header, it says the Leadr Advantage. You can check it out right there. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on the LeadrPulse podcast.